this video, we're going to learn how to make this sphere. Over here on the left, we're going to overlay a checkered pattern and then apply a drop shadow to it and add some shading as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the circle. So I'm going to click on this ellipse tool. If you don't see an ellipse here, click and hold on your left mouse button and you'll see a drop down menu and select ellipse. Now we want to create a circle, so we're going to hold the shift key, which keeps the proportions, the height and width equal. We're going to go over here about to the top left, click, and then drag with my left mouse button. So I'm holding the shift key and I'm also holding down my left mouse button. Now I'm going to release to create the circle. The next thing we're going to do is create the horizontal lines. So I'm going to click on my selection tool and click away, so I deselect that circle. Click back on the ellipse tool. And we're going to draw the ellipse. Now we're going to draw a, we're not going to hold the shift key this time, because we want the height to be smaller than the width. So, and we want it quite a bit smaller, maybe something about like that. And then we're going to release. Click the direct selection, the selection tool again, and we're going to zoom in. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and spin my mouse wheel. And then I'm going to move this ellipse so that both the lines, both the circle, the ellipse and the circle, their lines are tangent to each other. So you can see that here and there, so they don't overlap with each other like that, but they are tangent. And we want to also have a zero fill, so I'm going to highlight both these and click over this top left corner and change this to no fill. Okay, so we have our first horizontal line. The next thing we want to do is draw the center horizontal line. So I'm going to click on this, and we want it all to be the same proportion for height and width. So I want to copy this ellipse tool. I don't want to draw a new ellipse. I want to just copy this ellipse. So I'm going to hold the Alt key, and I'm going to click and then drag down towards about in the center. And then I'm going to release on my mouse button and then release the Alt key. I'm going to highlight both the center circle and the ellipse. I'm going to click again. I'm going to highlight both of them, select both of them, and then I'm going to click again on this circle so that it's this bright blue. So I'm making it a key object for the alignment purpose. I want to make sure this ellipse is perfectly centered with the circle. So I select both the object, then I click again on the bigger circle, and I click vertical align center. Now it already looks like it's centered towards along the horizontal, but I'm going to click it anyways, just to make sure it is. I'm going to click away, and then I'm going to click again on the center ellipse. I'm going to hold the Shift key and the Alt key. The Alt key will expand both sides equally. So for instance, if I hold the Alt key now, whenever I expand it this way, notice that both sides expand at the same proportion. Now I don't want to just expand it like that, because now the height and width are a different proportion than this ellipse up top. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to hold Control and then press Z to make it the original circle, the original ellipse that I drew. So I want to hold the Shift and the Alt key. The Shift again keeps the proportions the same as the original image, and the Alt key expands both sides. So I'm holding the Shift and the Alt key, and then I'm going to move over to the top left so I can see that double arrow, and then I'm going to expand it so that it snaps to that outer circle. Okay, so that's the center horizontal line. Now I'm just going to copy this circle or this ellipse and move it down to the bottom. So I'm going to hold the Alt key, click and hold my left mouse button, and then bring it down. Again, I want to make those two edges tangent to each other. And now I want to make sure everything's aligned, so I'm going to highlight everything and then center align. The next thing is I want to create the ellipse that is in between these two, the kind of the mid ellipse portion. So I'm going to bring this about right there, and hold Shift and Alt again, and bring it out so that it snaps. And you notice that this direction is not the same. So we're going to center a line again. Okay. Click on this, hold Shift, Alt, and bring it out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to click on this, hold the Alt key and drag it down till it joins. Okay. Now I'm noticing that it's not quite centered here, so I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. Okay. So I can drag it down. Yeah, that looks, and keep in mind that we're centering this line here. So this needs to be in center between here and there. Just to get an idea to make sure that we do have the same proportions. I'm going to hold the, let's see, I'm going to click here, I'm going to hold Shift, bring it down to this bottom line here. Notice how that this center of this line is not is not meeting with the edge of this ellipse. So I want to bring it down just a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty close. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom side. Okay, it looks like, yeah, so this is going to be a little more narrow. This is going to be a smaller line than the top line, because remember, this thing's kind of tilted towards us. So, and this is not in the center, so we're going to Shift Alt and bring it down just a little bit. Or did I do that the right direction? Yeah. So bring it down. Let's see how they look. Oh, actually, we need to go up. So let's go up. Okay, that looks pretty close. Pretty close. Doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so now those are the horizontal lines. The next thing we're going to do is create these vertical lines. Those are a little bit easier. So I'm going to, let's just take this circle. I'm going to hold the Alt key and copy it outwards. Then I'm going to just shrink it this way. Let's just make the small, the center one. Okay, I'm gonna hold the Alt key, drag it away, make it a little bigger. Alt key. Let's hold the Alt key and then expand. That'll be easier. And more. Okay, and let's try to equal these out a little bit. Okay, and then we're just going to draw a horizontal line or a vertical line, holding the Shift key, bringing it down, and there we go. Now, so that is a sphere, and you can see this would be as if it's a wireframe. And what we want to do is we want to make it to where it's not a wireframe. We want to delete these horizontal lines in the back here. So to do that, we're just going to double click on that ellipse, click the direct selection tool, click on that line there, or that little anchor point, click delete. And then we're going to double click on this one. Now we're double clicking so that it isolates that that ellipse because we don't want to delete any other points. So I'm going to click the direct selection tool, click again on that anchor point, click delete, okay, click away, double click on this ellipse, click back on the direct selection tool, click on that, just go along here doing the same thing. Okay. Now you notice that it's not quite aligned up here. That's okay. You can just zoom in and hold the Shift Alt and just expand it till it meets up there. You really want it to get it to join up. Okay. Then on the bottom, this you're going to actually have to cut it right at that line, right where it. So you're going to click. You might see an eraser. So you click over here to the first. Select the object. Select this half ellipse, and you might see an eraser tool here. So click and hold until you see scissors, and click about where those lines meet. Click the selection tool, not the direct selection. Click this one, and delete these lines here. Okay, and then you can maybe move it down a little bit so that it doesn't have that sharp edge kind of poking out. Okay, so there's the sphere, kind of a wireframe appearance. And the next thing we're going to do is fill in these little checker boards. So I'm going to highlight this whole object, or select this whole object. Then I'm going to go over here to this Live Paint Bucket tool. Now if I click and hold, you might see a shape builder tool. Something that looks like this. Click and hold, and then move down to the Live Paint Bucket tool. You want black to be the fill, and then you're going to click away, and now you see that it turns red. That indicates, and you have these three little boxes that are on the top of this paint bucket. That indicates that you're on the Live Paint Bucket. You're going to click here. It's going to paint all the boundaries that are enclosed. Now I'm going to hold the Alt key and move in. This works basically like the paint bucket in the old-fashioned paint program. It just finds the edges and fills it in. Okay. So I'm going to fill this in. So you kind of actually interpreted a little bit there because it didn't quite, that line didn't quite meet up. Okay. All right, there, now we're moving along. Now notice that this is kind of a false or erroneous sphere. This little dot should be really over here, but it's okay, it's close enough. It's a little more complicated to get that to be a perfect sphere, but I mean you can see that it looks, your eyes are pretty much fooled, so it doesn't really matter. So what we want to do is create the shading next. So I'm going to create the ellipse tool. I'm going to position my mouse so that I see it shows an intersect between the leftmost point of the circle and the topmost point of the circle. If it's not exact, it's okay. So I'm going to hold the Shift key, click, I'm going to drag over. Now you notice that it's a black circle. So I'm going to release. And then now we're going to add a gradient to this. So I'm going to click over here to this gradient tool. If you don't see it over here, go up to Window, go down to Gradient, and click on it, and you'll see a window pop up. Drag it over and keep it on this right-hand side. You'll find this tool is very handy, and you want it to have it accessible because you'll probably use it quite a bit. So I'm going to click on this radial gradient. Okay. And then make sure that you click the fill and not the outline. Make sure this fill's on top. A lot of times it will default on the stroke gradient, which I don't know why people would want to have the stroke be a gradient. I guess in case there are circumstances where you might want to apply a gradient to the stroke, but most cases you're going to want it to be the fill. So be sure that that's on top so that you're modifying the fill. You're going to double click on this point here, and you're going to make it black. And then you're going to make the opacity here, that's indicated on that's highlighted right now, that's 0, press enter. Okay. And now we want to move this, so the center, this is as if the light is coming from your nose, pointing and shining on this object. We want it to be on the top left, or I would like it to be on the top left. So I click on Edit Gradient. I'm going to click on this little white line and drag it up. Okay. Now this shading is quite a bit harsh. I mean, it's high contrast and you can't see any of the edges. So I'm gonna change the opacity of the dark shade, and I'm gonna put it about 75%. Okay. And that's all we're gonna do there. So we're gonna click on this selection tool and click away. So now we've got the appearance of a sphere, and we want to apply this drop shadow. Okay. Now you can actually click on the object and apply a drop shadow, but that would put a shadow on the back, like as if we're shining a light onto the object and there's a piece of paper behind the sphere. So the drop shadow wouldn't really work in this case. We're going to create our own drop shadow. And what I mean by that is if you go up to the effects and go down to, let's see, stylize, and click on drop shadow, that would automatically apply a drop shadow, but we're not going to do that because our circumstance is a little different than what that is trying to create. It's a useful tool, but we won't be using it here. So I'm going to just draw a little ellipse right below this this sphere, and we want it to be in the back. Well, we can't really see that here, so let's fill this in with black. Create no outline. Okay. So notice how it's in front. We want it to be in the back, so I'm going to click on this object, right click, arrange, send to back. Okay, post-recording editing here. I had an issue where I drew a ellipse, and let me make this black, and it always appeared to be in front, even if I right-clicked and clicked arrange and send to back, it looked like it was always in the front. The reason why is it wasn't actually in the front, it just looked that way, and the reason why is because we applied the gradient using transparency. So this isn't a white color shaded towards black. It is a 0 opacity black shaded towards a 75% opacity black to apply this shading. And so this ellipse isn't in front. It just looks that way because the only color in this image is black and different levels of opacity. So if I add a black object, it will look as if it's in the front because it has 0 opacity. Okay. Those are kind of minor details. The reason, so to overcome that is I need to draw a white sphere behind this so that it kind of blocks out this, so that so this black doesn't shine through this object. So I'm going to click on this sphere, this circle, this outside circle. I'm going to hold the Alt key, drag it out. So this is that shaded transparency, that gradient transparency that I was talking about. We want it to just be white, no fill. Okay, and we're just going to drag it back here so that it overlays it, and then right click, click arrange, send to back. Okay, now this still is going to appear in front because every time you draw an object, it shows up in front of every previous object that you drew. So we want this to be in the back. Control Z, I accidentally clicked on the this circle. So we want it to be in the back, so I'm going to right click, arrange, send to back. So notice that now this sphere overlays this ellipse. Okay, now we're going to make this smaller, and we want this shadow, so the light's coming up here from the top left, and we want this drop shadow to appear at the back right. Okay, now we're going to apply a blur, so add effect, blur, and Gaussian blur. You can modify this any way you want to make it as sharp or as blurry as you want. I would say about like that. Okay, and there you have it. There it is, a sphere, a checkered sphere with a drop shadow.